Mercury retrograde in full effect, guys. So thank you guys so much. We, of course, have used this software for 6-7 years with our online signup, so we've never had this much stuff going on. So I called Pat, and she's like, yep, we're in Mercury retrograde shadow. So again, I wanted to just say thank you. We have an amazing, amazing community. And again, this has been a tradition for New Visions. And so we're really glad we're able to have everybody join us.
Absolutely.
But everyone's been so understanding and patient. And so we really, really, really appreciate that. So, yeah. Do you have anything to say? Because Matt was unfortunately not on for his live this morning.
Yeah, I didn't unfortunately make it into the store in time to do it before we opened because the roads were still a little rough at that point this morning. But luckily we made it in there and we still made it through the day. So it was good. But that'll just be more stuff to talk about next week, right? Yeah, this is definitely a highlight of the year, getting to carry on this tradition and get to get that perspective of the astrological view of what this coming year has to hold for us, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I also am aware that we do have some new community members. Mm-hmm. So welcome back, everyone who's been a part of this amazing community for 35 plus years. Yeah. We are so honored to have you. And I know some of you are so happy to be here tonight because you actually moved out of state or you're not local anymore. And so this is an amazing ability with this technology to be able to have you guys join. But then for those of you who are new, we should give you just a really brief background just to give you an idea of what's going on here. And even for those of you who have been a part of the community, what's happening with these Friday night forums. So Friday night forums have been a tradition of New Visions Books and Gifts. It used to be called Friday Night Fun Shops.
That's right.
And so they have been going on every single Friday at New Visions Books and Gifts in person for 35 plus years. So when COVID hit, of course, we did a couple online. We did last year, we did Pat's Astrological Forecast online as well. And then Bob decided that this year he was no longer going to be running the New Visions Friday forums. He said he's 70 this year and he would like to no longer have the responsibility. So we're of course always there to be the right-hand helper, man and woman for Bob. And so here we are, we're here to help and we're here to make the process a little bit easier for you guys next time if we can, without a Mercury retrograde, hopefully. But again, if you have not been to New Visions, you just found us online, because I know some of you have. I want to just give you guys and clarify the difference so there's no confusion. Firefly Hollow Wellness Center is a holistic wellness clinic here in South York, Pennsylvania, and we are partnered with New Visions, so we support them. We offer open house readings with them, along with Pat Dumas and some of the other people that work with us, and also another amazing readers and practitioners that are in the local area that also will be joining us. Give a shout out if you're one of our practitioners. And a special happy birthday to Monica Pagler. Her birthday is today.
That's right.
And she is one of our massage therapists that comes and supports New Visions and the community with her amazing massage skills for their open houses. So give her a happy birthday shout out. But again, New Visions has been open since 1987. They are in Eastern Boulevard right now. They've been numerous locations, but it is the best place to get books, gifts, crystals, jewelry, the biggest selection of incense and candles and tarot and oracle cards that I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. But Matt is there, of course, to help you guys out if you have not been able to see him or in person or even online. He's there Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Mm-hmm. And then Bob, if you're out there, and David, we give you a shout out, and Candy as well, an amazing staff there at New Visions, and the owner, Bob Hall. We do also have Bill Trivett here with us in spirit. And of course, we give love to Bill Trivett, one of the owners who did pass away in 2015. Mm-hmm. So we are, again, Firefly Hollow is in South York. We are a holistic wellness clinic, and we offer services and classes. So just the difference between us, so there's no confusion. But we will have signups through the Firefly Hollow website from now on, again, to take that responsibility off of Bob's plate, to make registering for in-house Friday night forums, when Bob gives us the permission again to do them in person, that will help us with some of the seating. For those of you who have been a part of our family for New Visions, you know that some of our amazing speakers pack the house and we have standing room only sometimes. So it's really helpful for Bob and for Matt for having this online registration in the future. So we're able to gives the seating in a lot easier way. And also, we would love to be supporting some local scholarship fund with Firefly today, but any other local businesses, any of the speakers or presenters that come, some of the funds to promote them, and even some of the nonprofits in the area. So thank you so much for your donation. If you were unable to donate for some sort of technical glitch, I will share in the chat today, we'll share the PayPal link, and you're more than welcome to do that. And we greatly appreciate that as well. So do you have anything else to announce before we bring in Pat?
I think that's it. I think we got it all covered.
All right. There will be a question and answers for today. So please, we'd love for you to just get on there and get involved. She'll be 3 spots so we can do some Q&As live with Pat. She'll pause during her presentation to do so. And please be aware, Pat's an amazing astrologer. She's been doing this for many, many years. If you're new to astrology, we always say that you and Pat, both as astrologers, they speak a lot of astrologies. So if there's any terms they won't understand correctly, she can clarify. And please know that there is a lot more information out there that will be shared, and you will have handouts for later. She just did not get them finished, and we'll have them completed as soon as possible, probably this weekend. And that's why we'll also have the benefit of emailing you guys those out. So, all right, Miss Pat, we're really excited to have you come on. How you doing? Let's see a sound check. Make sure
well.
Can everybody hear it, Pat?
Can you hear me? Hello? Can we get a
Everybody
couple?
can.
There we go.
Yep, we're good. Awesome.
I could not be happier than seeing Bill join us tonight. My teacher. Loved him. Yes, I'm very excited about tonight. I really am. A lot of people have been approaching this coming year with a lot of trepidation. You know, this has been a tough year, and they're wondering, what hell hath brought, what's coming next? And I think I've always felt that it's so much better to have knowledge and be forearmed. You're ready then for what universe throws at you. I don't think we'll have anything that we can't handle, provided we choose to come at the approach with love. I really don't.
Awesome. Do you want me to help? Do you want me to put up your slideshow now, or do you have anything?
I think you could. Unless you have any last minute questions for me, we might as well go ahead and get underway.
All right. We'll be the men and women behind the curtain, so you just tell us if you need anything. All right.
Sounds good. All righty. So let's see. Let me pull my own screen up here. Now, if I am not mistaken, this is my 4th or 5th year that I've been doing this. I was so blessed to have been able to join with Bill Trivet to do predictions. And it was interesting to carry that on without him. And I'm really, really, really glad to see that beautiful candle lit, because it reminds me of our roots. Well, let me give you a little bit of the structure of how tonight is going to work. We're going to be doing this first off by offering you a list of the larger, let's say, aspects that happen over the next 12 months. Now, something happens every single day when it comes to astrology. There's always a connection between planets. So I'm only going to be choosing what I call the highlights, the bigger areas of connection, shall we say. After that, I'll start talking a little bit more about things like the eclipses that will be coming up. I'll be talking about the retrogrades that will be underway. And I will be talking about the larger planets, the Pluto down to Jupiter, and how it's going to have an effect on you. Then we'll finalize with actual predictions based upon what I see in the chart ahead for the United States. So a couple of quick caveats before I get going. I'm not looking at these charts, so that you know, I am not looking at these charts from any particular political standpoint. I am simply looking at them from what they tell me. As a matter of fact, I had a really good conversation with a fellow reader about this, that I can only look ethically at what is there. I can't extrapolate and try to guess what that, fill in the blanks. I can only read and tell you what I see. So that's what you will hear tonight, what I see. Secondly, I'm a human being, and I'm perfectly capable of screwing up, trust me. All I can say is that these are my best interpretations based on my experience and what I know of astrology. And then finally, I'm looking forward to sharing this information with you. So let us take a look. Okay. Now, we should have, if I'm not mistaken, why are we not working here? Share. Forgive me, we're going to have to go through this again. Window, share, go.
Trust me, it's been my whole day.
That's exactly what it feels like.
We did this last year, had no issues whatsoever.
Yeah, we had no issues at all, right? It was smooth as silk.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the silk has a few nubs in it this time around. All right, so I've already done my caveats and my precursors and what have you. So here we go. Let us begin with the transits. The very first thing that popped up for me when I was looking at the transits for this particular year is the concept of the Venus point. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but the orbit of Venus is a very interesting one. It actually, over the course of a year, forms a 5-pointed star. And the Venus point itself is when Venus comes back into conjunction with the sun, sits in the same place, the same degree of the same sign as the sun. Now, normally, there's one of those every single year. This year, it's a little different. We have 2. So the first Venus point is actually going to be hitting on January 8th, which is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And it's going to be in the sign, as you see right here, it's going to be in the sign of Capricorn because that's where the sun is right now. So what that says to me, I think about conjunctions in general. Conjunctions of planets mean that the planet's energies merge together. If the sun represents our identity and Venus represents our ability to connect, the sun making that connection enhances and amplifies that second planet. So the best way to think of the Venus point is it's love. It's just love incarnate. Bernadette Brady, who is Dr. Bernadette Brady, who's one of the 2 astrologers that form the British group called Astrologos, calls a conjunction the invasion of the body snatchers. It essentially has 2 planets coming together and one overtakes, well, one merges with the other quite strongly. So when the sun merges with Venus, we have love. Total love and connectedness. Now, mind you, that's not lust or desire. That would be Mars. But love, the true reason to come together, connectedness, harmony. And that's really what we're looking at when it comes to this particular Venus point. And it's in the Venus point sign of Capricorn. So it's creating the structures for the kinds of connectedness we want. Capricorn is practical. It's earthy, it's sensual, and it wants longevity. As an astrologer, if I'm looking at 2 people's charts who are, want to be seen as a couple, I'd like to see a connection of Capricorn or Saturn to Venus on both sides, because that means they're committed to each other. So this particular Venus point is asking you to think about, are your relationships practical? Are they long lasting? And is there going to be longevity involved? It's been interesting, according to astrological research, a lot of people end up, without realizing it, getting engaged over a Venus point. So if you find out that one of your friends got engaged over the weekend, you'll know why. It's also a very fertile time. So if you are interested in possibly conceiving, this might be the weekend to do it. Next up, we have on January 11th, the waxing square of Mars, Neptune. And it's the first of 2. As you see, Mars is over here in Sagittarius, and it's making a square here to Neptune. Mars is the planet of drive and motivation. Neptune is the planet of lethargy and laissez-faire, sort of like the dulling or the vagueness that comes with all kinds of dreaminess. So it can be consistent with a connection of this kind for people to experience low energy, to experience perhaps even illness, although that's more Saturn, Neptune. It's more this idea of, 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of thing. Mars drives forward, Neptune calms it all down. There is also an aspect of Neptune on the less positive side that you can think of that has to do with the willingness to be deceived or to deceive. So there's very often with this particular connection, we can see instances of suspicion, deceit, lies that might be being told either about you or you telling them about someone else. So a big, big warning for this particular date, January 11th, really avoid sliding into negative thinking. Really avoid trying to blame somebody else for issues you're having or problems that you're experiencing, because it's going to rebound back on you, quite bluntly. The action, think of it as going to battle for the ideal. That's the positive that we want to have, instead of aggression and anger taking over with deceit and weakness. Make sense? So let's keep it positive. And remember, this will be repeated later on in November when Mars is on the other side of Neptune, and it'll make another connection. But this time it will be in Gemini. We'll talk about that when that one comes up. The next date to be aware of is January 30th. This is when Venus, which is now in retrograde, stations direct and begins going forward again. It went retrograde, on December 29th or December 28th, actually. Locally, it was late. So I guess what I want you to think about during this period, have you been rethinking your relationships? Have you been possibly trying to figure out, what is it that I really want in a relationship? And is the person with whom I'm sharing space the one who should be? Do we have the same goals in mind? Do we want the same things? Venus retrograde, any retrograde, is going to, by nature, drive the energy of the planet inward. So you're being demanded. The universe is asking you, what do you want? Who do you want? And how do you want to share it? This particular one is Venus in Capricorn. So again, it's asking you, how do you want to build the structures upon which you will create a life with somebody else? It's also because Venus rules finances. It's a very, very good time to assess your finances, try to figure out a good repayment plan of debt. It's a good time to think about the investments that you've made and perhaps do some tweaking, do some adjusting. And you still have time to get that underway, by the way, because we still have until the 30th of January for that to take place. This is not the time to make a luxury purchase. You can, however, often be very successful by making a purchase of something that is good quality, but is a great deal, perhaps on sale. This is not the time to buy a Lexus. Let's put it that way. This is the time to buy a really good deal on a CRV. If that makes sense, okay? The next date that we want to be aware of is actually throughout the whole month of February. This is rather unprecedented, really, the way things are working out. As of February 1st, up here, if you can see it, Mars and Venus are going to start to become in striking distance with each other. Now, Mars and Venus put together, Mars, masculine energy, the driving, dominant, motivational energy. Venus, the receptive, creative, the basin in which creativity occurs. You put the two together and you got steam, you got creation right there in a bowl, right? Okay. So if you think about this, if we have that kind of creative energy going all the way through the month of February, we're going to have some exciting times on Valentine's Day. When we have Venus and Mars usually connected, it only happens about once a year for maybe 10 days. Because Venus takes about a year to go around the sun, and Mars takes roughly 2 years to go around the sun. But for whatever reason, with the way the orbits are working in this particular year, for this year, these guys are going to be staying in place until just after the middle of March. They're flirting right now. They're within they will be on February 1st. They will be within 6 degrees, which is a little wide, but they're starting to connect with each other. When you have inner planets, you can get that close by about 6 degrees. Then we have, interestingly enough, on the 10th, we have Venus and Mars even closer together. They're only 4 degrees apart. But we've got it joined by a perfect conjunction of Saturn and the Sun. Now let's think about that. If we remember how we talked about the conjunctions being connections coming together. The Sun is identity, the Saturn is authority. So we've got that concept of taking control We've got the concept of incredible masculine, feminine connectivity and creativity. Then we throw into the mix, look what else is going on down here. Right up next to the Venus and Mars conjunction, we've got Mercury and Pluto moving together. So let's turn this all into English. Around February 10th through close to the end of the month, we're going to be looking at the ability to have incredible creative energy, the ability to sell that creative energy through persuasive communication, Mercury and Pluto, as well as feeling very confident in oneself if it's an idea that you're trying to get across, an agenda that you're trying to move forward, Saturn and the Sun. All of this together, this is a salesman's dream. It really, really is. But you could also put it into the concept of selling yourself as a partner, of trying to make sure that you are communicating how you feel about people, the true deep emotions that you're experiencing with others. Now let's move along a little bit further. I forgot that. I actually highlighted those. Now, this date here, February 16th, is when we have the exact conjunction of Venus and Mars. It's going to be a lovely Valentine's weekend. You really need to, that's all I'm going to say. You need to take advantage of getting out of town, having some time together, and really making use of this energy, because it's truly spectacular for building a romantic connection between you and the person you care the most about. On February 17th, this is where we have a little bit different, something just a little bit different going on. This is where Jupiter is making a sextile to Uranus. While all this Venus, Mars, Saturn, and all the rest of that stuff is going on, Jupiter and Uranus are over there having their own party. I mean, they're really having a good time. Don't forget, Uranus is that sense of personal freedom, the idea of a positive outlook, Jupiter, meshed with your own independence. You put those two together, and the opportunities to make positive change in your life is just out of this world. It's stupendously important that you pay attention to what feels like your own true self, your own true north. You must listen to your inner voice at this time. Ignoring an opportunity like this would be a crime. It really, really would. This is a time to be able to think, to philosophize about big ideas. This is the time where you can really formulate your personal philosophy to its best advantage, the one that it means most to you as an individual. Here in this area, this becomes accurate. That sextile becomes exact with the 6th and 8th houses being affected. So, I mean, talk about the important things of life. The 8th house, sex, death, and taxes. There we go. The real big issues: life, death, regeneration, the important things. Okay. Then in the 6th house, our daily routines. What is it that's most important to us? Our health. All of these things are deeply important thoughts that you can really work with this Jupiter-Uranus sextile. Now, that's just looking at the chart individually. You also need to look, if you know how and know where these parts of your chart are, which two houses in your own chart get activated by Jupiter resting here at 14 degrees of Pisces, making a lovely sextile to Uranus at 11 degrees of Taurus. So these are things that you need to look at and see what parts of your life you can enhance by knowing the energies that are at work out there. Oh, another thing I almost forgot. This is one time, if all things are equal and it looks pretty good in your chart to gamble a little bit, perhaps, this is a good time to take a risk on an investment, because it's a lucky period. Jupiter making a connection to Uranus's sudden, unexpected, positive outcomes. So if it looks good, it may actually be a good investment for you. March 3rd. This is when we get to the point where we've had all of the Venus, Mars, Pluto stuff going on, and it's all conjunct at 27 degrees of Capricorn. So we've got the essence of superhuman strength, motivation and drive of Mars, combined with the explosive energy of Pluto. Put those together. If you have a major hard work, physical effort job to get done, that's the day to do it. Add into that the Venus concept as well, and you can really get the idea of connectedness with others married into this concept. Whenever Pluto comes into play, it always makes me think that there's going to be some major upheavals in store. There always are when it comes to Pluto. Pluto doesn't make change gently. Never has, and it never will. But what it does, even when it levels everything, what it's doing is making space to create something new, to build something new. And the harder you fight it, the more painful that is. These planets are all in Capricorn. So do your best to go away from the lower manifestation of Capricorn, which is fear, and instead leaning into the more positive upper levels of Capricorn, which is wisdom and leadership. Pay very close attention to what house is affected in your chart. If you know it for 27 degrees of Capricorn, you want to know what's being activated in your own chart by this incredible transformation. I'll give you an example for me. I mean, I know my chart, so I can give that to you. My own natal Venus is actually 24 degrees of Capricorn. So this is all going on right on top of my own relationship, connection stuff, money stuff. And it's just close enough to be a conjunction. Venus is in my 8th house, but the 27 degrees actually goes just over the edge into my 9th house. So both my 8th house of irrevocable change, transformation, and my 9th house of higher thinking, travel, wanting to expand my worldview. Those are both activated. So if I had to make predictions for myself, if I was talking to myself as a client, I could expect to see some very dramatic changes in my social patterns. And that's not at all surprising. I just retired. So I'm not going to be interacting with the same people I was before. I'm going to have a whole new group of people that I will be having social interaction with. My finances are going to shift and change. The source of my money will be someplace different. Since I've retired, it will be the government that will be my best friend. I also might be able to finally get that book that I have percolating in my brain out of my head and down onto the keyboard, because the 9th house rules publishing. So that's one more way that this could transfer itself into some really positive energy for me. But what I really need to be very careful of is I need to be careful to not try to manipulate others to adopt my personal philosophy. Try not to be so forceful and so excited in explaining and believing what I believe that I try to shove my own ideas down someone else's throat. That is a danger of Pluto. And since my Mercury is right up there in that same vicinity, that's a reality for me. So I know that sounded like an awful lot of information, but really what you need to know with this particular aspect, there's going to be transformation in your life. It will be transformation related to the basic structures you have related to connecting with others. So to give yourself more information, check out your chart and find out where 27 degrees of Capricorn rests. April 4th is the next one that comes up. Mars and Saturn are making a conjunction. Conjunctions are the big things that I look at because that's where the energies are the strongest. Mars is the faster moving planet, so it will overtake the energy of Saturn. Saturn is the energy of stoic, absolutely making sure that we do things by the book. Mars wants to drive forward. So as you can imagine, a combination of Saturn and Mars is going to end up being frustration. It's either strong, sustained effort. Let's say you have to, this is a marathon. Think of this. This is the energy of a marathon, not the energy of a sprint. This is sustained hard work, or it's banging your head against the wall. Those are the two options. Let's say this is all happening at 22 degrees of Aquarius here. let's say that 22 degrees of Aquarius rests in your 4th house too. Let's just say that this image here actually looks like your chart. This would say to me that there is frustration and difficulty within the family, the 4th house. So that you're maybe unable to move forward and do the things you want to do, Mars, because of responsibilities that you have to the family, Saturn. Conversely, you may want to go home. You're very homesick, but you're kind of at an emotional low because the 4th house is also our deepest emotional foundations. So you want to make some changes, but you can't. You can't move forward. You can't deal with it. Saturn is holding you back. Know that this never happens without a good reason. Saturn wants to hold you in place for a second to absorb and understand the energies that are at work. Mars wants to push you right through it. Let's just leave this by the wayside and just keep going. But if you do that, you'll miss something. If you do that, there's a very important karmic or evolutionary destiny-related step that you will miss. That's why Saturn is demanding of you to hold steady, focus, deal with it, work it through, then move on. Some other ideas in terms of keyword, you could be subduing your own drives for the sake of somebody in your family. You could be doggedly motivated, Saturn, Mars, to get your house in order to get it sold, 4th house. So there's a lot of different ways that these keywords can work together, but they do all ultimately have to do with the idea that your drive has to be slowed down for a short period of time. Doesn't usually last that long, maybe a few days. The next one is April 12th. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous, big connection. When Jupiter and Neptune come together, it happens only every 13 years or so, by the way the orbits of these planets work. And if you think about it, the last time it happened was December 21st, 2009. It was winter solstice, as a matter of fact. And it was at 24 degrees of Aquarius. It remains to me so interesting to look at history and see what happened at the times these particular connections occurred before. On that date, December 21st, 2009, well, just before that, James Cameron's movie Avatar debuted on the 18th of December, and it broke all box office records. Jupiter, Neptune. Neptune rules film. Jupiter is more. It became the highest grossing movie of its time. And since movies are ruled by Neptune and Jupiter is that big element, Aquarius worked in because of the science fiction aspect of the film. Another thing that was interesting on that date, remains of the first dwelling in the holy city of Nazareth was dated back to the time of Jesus, was discovered by Israeli archaeologists. This was in the Jerusalem Post. So spirituality, Neptune and Jupiter, came together, combined with science and technology and archaeology. Aquarius. I found that really interesting. So this one is in Pisces. And how beautiful this is, how incredibly karmic this particular connection is. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. We are talking about opportunities for spiritual self-development that are just off the scale, that are just completely beyond anything you might have thought of before. The last time this particular conjunction happened in Pisces was back in 1856, when the spiritualist movement was really big time underway in the United States and in Europe. This is a great time for you to broaden your spiritual horizons, to learn more about what you believe, about what you'd like to learn, what religions you might like to study, what other people believe. The idea of connectedness, all of us, the connectedness of the collective that we have here. This is also a great time for joy and creativity. Neptune rules the arts, dance, music, and Jupiter rules the beauty of being able to have more and have it be easy, be an easy flow. The one thing I would be very careful of is that this is an interaction. This is a connection, an aspect that can cause overconfidence. I would be very careful around this date, a couple days before, a couple days afterwards of April 12th, to have caution in any business dealings, because it's very easy to make you believe that you've got everything, all the I's dotted and T's crossed. Neptune wants the ideal. Jupiter wants you to be happy. So you put those two together and you might not want to look at the things that might not be quite right about a business deal. So I would just say, be on your guard. Be on your guard and take a look in your own chart at where in your chart, what house, what area of your life is affected by 23 degrees of Pisces, because that's where you're most willing to deceive yourself. So, but this is truly an incredibly beautiful opportunity to get some spiritual growth underway. May 3rd, we've got a Jupiter-Pluto sextile, and this is totally success through positive change. It's the kind of transit that can really make the world different, because Pluto talks about the grand scale, not daily stuff, but the big stuff. Jupiter makes that even larger, even grander. So you can make a positive change in the world at large, or just your own small part of it, whatever works for you. Jupiter is still conjunct Neptune, though it is in a separating aspect, so it's starting to ease off a little bit on its dreaminess and becoming more concrete as it comes together with Pluto. This is success through positive change and transformation, and the change is relatively easy. It's relatively flowing. It doesn't feel like an uphill battle to make the change for yourself. As a matter of fact, you could almost liken it to feel like it's just a natural evolution. That's how calm and easy this can be, which is unusual when you're dealing with Pluto, believe me. There is a fated feel to this particular aspect, this particular transit. Very powerful forces are at work behind the scenes to help you move ahead. This is the kind of thing where you could all of a sudden fall into place with the perfect job promotion or the perfect job opportunity. An investment that's sort of been not performing real well, all of a sudden makes a surge. All of these things are possible. The bottom line is that it should be a really good time for you and for the part of your life that's associated with this particular degree of Pisces. Okay. Quick one. This is just a quick one. It's a Mars-Pluto square. Mars doesn't take long to go through a transit. It's a quick one. So this is an uncomfortable transit, but it doesn't last long. So just hang in there for a couple of days and you should be all set. The thing that you should think about with this one is power struggles. That's totally what you're looking at. The idea of power and someone else trying to wrest it from you. Because when you have a square, it's always a challenge. There's a challenge. Somebody or something is trying to force a new action on you. And that's what we're talking about when we look at Mars and Pluto. It depends on the house, how it's going to play itself out. Now, let's say, for example, you had one of the planets in the 10th house, one of the planets in the first house. Think of it as a race. If Mars is in the first, a race to climb the corporate ladder, Pluto in the 10th. So you want to definitely get power in place. You want to have your personal power enhanced. The 4th, 7th, it could be a great drive, Mars, to find the perfect marital partner in the 7th house. But it could put you at odds with your family. So let's say the 7th and 4th houses were involved. You fall in love with somebody who you think is perfect and your family doesn't like them. These are the kinds of rubbing issues, challenging issues that could be coming on. But again, as I say, it's a relatively short-lived transit and it'll only last a couple of days. This one always makes me think of Freddie Mercury. That's why I put in I Want to Break Free. Mars, Uranus, the North Node, and the IC, the nadir of the chart, the lower section, the 4th house cusp. The thing that you need to be careful of with this particular one is be very wary of impulsiveness. Whenever I see Mars making a connection to a client's natal Uranus, or the other way around, Uranus to their natal Mars, I always warn them, this is not the time to walk around not being present, because Mars, Uranus is the marker for accidents, impulsive accidents. since they're both coming at you from exteriorly, be wary of impulsive things that will potentially cause you to end up not exactly where you'd want to end up, I guess is the best way to put it. There's a lot of erratic energy that's associated with this particular connection. There's a lot of impulsive action. There's a lot of anger sometimes when you're being thwarted from being able to make the driving action that you want to do. Because Mars is involved and Uranus is involved, there's also the potential to walk a little bit on the wild side from a sexual standpoint. So be careful that you are wise and not go too far. But enjoy yourself. Have a bit of a break free from any stereotypes or any things that held you back. It's a good time to discover you, to discover who am I? What is it that drives and motivates me, rather than what does everybody think I should be doing? So anytime there's a Uranus transit, you've got to realize that the universe is giving you the opportunity to understand yourself. So that's the way I would do it. If things feel fated to you, if this feels like I am supposed to be doing this and you can't budge yourself from that feeling, pay attention to it and act accordingly. That's a very good judgment for you. That square to Saturn is going to try to slow you down here. We have a square going on here. That Saturn is going to try to help you not go over the edge. I would say Saturn is your friend in this case. Mars, Uranus will really make you want to blow the roof off, and Saturn will hold you back just a bit so that you're able to look at yourself in the mirror the next day. But with it connected to the North Node as it is, and in the third house of communication, I could not be more strongly suggesting to you this is the time to listen to your own inner voice and speak your truth. The North Node is all about our destiny. So this is your time. Look for August 1st to be the time for you to discover yourself. August 18th is a really nice time. This is a Venus, Jupiter, the two benefics, the two wonderful, wonderful planets of the zodiac. It's considered to be one of the loveliest aspects in astrology, this trine. Trines involve an easy flow, all blockages removed. So you've got a real ease in being able to show affection and show love to someone, to be able to have connectedness and harmony without a whole lot of effort. It's an optimistic time, and there's usually plenty of love around to be shared. One thing that I have noticed with this particular aspect, I don't know if you've ever watched the movie The Craft or talked about, any of the witchcraft movies and heard the concept of the glamour. It's this patina of attractiveness that just sort of you can bring over yourself. That's really what this particular aspect can do for you. It brings on an added attractiveness to you that makes you really approachable for people. And so it's truly a very lovely, lovely aspect. Also a good one when it comes to luck. October 22nd is the second Venus point. Remember we discussed this where Venus makes its 5-pointed star orbit? Well, this is the second time that Venus is able to make a conjunction with the sun. And how glorious is this? It's in anaretic degree. There's a good one for you. 29 degrees of any sign is called the anaretic degree, just before the planet changes sign. Incredibly powerful, lots of energy. And it's in Libra, which is ruled by Venus. So we have this most wonderful connection time of being able to be in love with love. And it's in the 7th house of romantic partnerships. I mean, come on. Throw into this, it's not in conjunction really, but Mercury is also in Libra. So you are already learning how to be able to communicate in ways that will connect you even more. So this is a real nice time to plan a getaway. October 22nd, make it a good one. November 14th and 15th. This is a cool weekend. This is my daughter's birthday, so I hope she's going to be able to watch this. Jupiter and Neptune combined, they're in conjunction, or close enough to a conjunction. They're going to be trining Venus, Mercury, and the Sun up here in Scorpio. So love is truly in the air. Remember, a trine is that easy flow. So we have the beautiful aspect of Jupiter, Neptune, that ability to connect with others, to empathize, to have compassion in a beautiful flowing motion, with your identity being married to the planet of love and the ability to communicate. We're talking very, very intense connection because it's in Scorpio. So this is a really nice connection, and it's over that entire weekend. Now, the one monkey wrench that can get thrown into this is Uranus sitting over here. Uranus is resting at 16 degrees of Taurus, which is kind of opposed to the Sun. And it's also making some other connections as well. The one thing about Uranus is that Uranus makes connections, but it does it, I don't want to call it platonically, because there's a lot of affairs that go on with Uranus without commitment. Let's put it that way. You can think of somebody who has a Venus or a Sun Uranus connection. They're in it for themselves. So just be aware of yourself and your partner. What are your motivations for being able to connect on this particular weekend? But overall, it's truly a very, very lovely period. November 19th brings in the concept of the second Mars-Neptune square. This was one of the first transits we talked about at the very beginning of the year. Well, this time around, Mars is resting in Gemini, but it's also in retrograde. Mars retrograde is one of the most difficult of the planets to deal with. All Mars wants to do is move forward, move outward, challenge, get on. And when it's in retrograde, it's demanding that you can't. So I would say anger, frustration, these are possible outcomes of this particular connection. But again, blessedly, we're looking at only a few days at most. When you're dealing with a Mars in Gemini, be really careful. You can truly wound with words in this particular setup. And when you're dealing with Neptune as well, there's a real opportunity for lies to be coming forward. So just be really careful. Be very careful that you don't use your words as a double-edged sword, and that you don't do your best to deceive yourselves. And the final one that really jumped out at me for this particular year is the Sun square Jupiter. Very short-lived. It's only a couple days. Sun, moves a degree every single day. But there's a Sun-Jupiter square. You're going to feel like you can conquer the world. It can be depressing for people who feel closed in their lives. Jupiter wants you to grow, to be big, to make life a big footprint. And this particular transit may show you that your life isn't what you want it to be. Your identity isn't what you want it to be. The other side of that coin could be extreme confidence, extreme pride, feeling like you've got the luck of the Irish, the French, the English, whoever, all combined together, and too much optimism. So beware of biting off more than you can chew. This is not a day to say, yeah, I can do that, to everything that comes along. You will be so exhausted and drained by the end of it, it's not even funny. So just note which houses in your chart this particular connection comes at. In this case, it happens to be the 0 degrees of another very sensitive degree. 0 degrees Aries for Jupiter, 0 degrees Capricorn for the Sun. What two houses get involved there? And that's where you need to be very careful you don't overextend yourself. Now, I have thrown a tremendous amount of information at you. Is there anything in particular that we have for questions by any chance?
Because there's a lag, Pat, we're going to just give a couple minutes for that to be heard, so that they can type their questions. And then, of course, everyone's typing. And then if you're typing on a cell phone, you know how long that takes.
Oh, yes.
Except for Matt. Matt, of course, taught me the way on your cell phone where you just like move your finger all around like crazy. And then it just makes the words.
Yes. I don't like what autocorrect does for me.
I feel the same way. So they're still like, I miss the keyboard, like the pull-out keyboards on the old.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Those were so, like the little thumb typing real quick. So
much easier to work with. I agree. So much easier to work with.
The one thing I do want to just correct, Corby was asking about the first slides were saying 2021 aspects.
Oh, my apologies.
I said I'm pretty sure it's 2022. I know.
Mercury retrograde.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I know. No, I know. And I know I was talking to people, they're like, is it Mercury retrograde? I was like, actually, it's probably not. So my staff earlier today or yesterday too, because we were just having this whole energy happening. And I was like, I don't know, but let me ask Pat. And she's like, it's in shadow. It's, yeah. So not till the 14th, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It will go. All right. It will actually station and go retrograde. I see David's question. We're going to be talking a lot about supply chain and about specific predictions, David. That's going to be coming up a little bit later. Shall we move on then? I'm not seeing a whole lot.
Any other questions at all? Any other questions?
All right.
We got two more breaks for questions. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box and we'll come back to it if that's okay, Pat.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
So we're going to move back here to this. And we're going to come into the eclipses. All right. So the eclipses, as you know, that's when the eclipses are really they're sort of grandiose full moons and new moons. What makes an eclipse is that, well, you know what? I'm not even going to do this because you're talking about the ecliptic and the position, and it's what you want to know is what does it mean to me, right? So eclipses are really just like regular lunations, the full and new moons, but they have far more reaching effects. Okay, they can be 6 months to a year, depending on the sign, depending on what's going on with the planets, and whether it's a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse. Bill Trivett, my beloved Bill, likened them to having a spotlight being turned on in parts of a room that were previously hidden in the dark, which I think is a really good way of looking at it. Another one I came across was by astrologer Sally Kirkland. The way she put it, and I'm going to read what her definition was, a shadow is thrown during an eclipse, which is why eclipse symbolism is said to be shadowy and hidden. Makes sense? Once the shadow lifts, it brings what's hidden to light and sheds a new perspective on a current situation. So that was, I thought, a really good interpretation of what the effects of an eclipse can be felt like. At the highest level, an eclipse manifests itself in one of two ways. For a new moon, a solar eclipse, you're looking at new vision, new awareness, starting a new process, a reset perhaps, a fresh start. Creativity being brand new and fresh. The idea of research is also part of the new moon, preparing for being able to find something new. There's an excitement and a desire for change that's connected with a new moon because it is new. It's all potential. It's total potential. And then finally, they have a more profound effect on humanity when it's a new moon because it is just that. It is potential. It's anything you want it to be. What are you going to do with it is the concept. Then we have the full moon, the lunar eclipse, where the sun and the moon are opposed each other in the heavens. These are culminations. This is things coming full circle, so to speak. You have endings and releases that are related with full moons, realizations and understandings of what you've been working with since the new moon. There's a heightened sensitivity that is attached to any kind of a full moon. Oppositions are what we think of when we talk about full moons. How we learn things by looking at other people or watching other people experience things. There's the concept of balance that we think of with the full moon. There's always that fulcrum tip, the idea of having to manage your time properly. How can I have this and that at the same time? I've got to have time management skills to be able to make that happen. And we also think of relationships because it's always dealing with an axis of the zodiac. So let's say it was a full moon on a first and seventh house axis. Then you're talking about the first house, me. How am I dealing with this? 7th house, me and someone else. How am I as a partner dealing with this situation? So when we look at these kinds of situations, we're looking at the houses they fall into, we're looking at the signs they fall into, and it's coupled with any aspects to the planets or the luminaries, the sun and the moon, that are going on at the same time. They all color the interpretation of each particular eclipse. Now, one of the things that I found interesting when I did my study with Astrologos, Bernadette Brady talks about the Saros cycles. You think about each eclipse as this individual event that happens. But what you may not realize is Saros cycles have tracked the Babylonians back in 757 or thereabouts AD, started tracking the effects of eclipses and realized that they follow a pattern. You're talking stepping way back, the long view mirror here. But over 1,000 years, you start to see a pattern evolve. They're like families, and that's how she described them. The way she put it is that stepping back and looking at the geometry of how eclipses occur, not on the individual level, but rather on the larger cyclic playing field of life, gives hints as to how the energies may play themselves out. For each seemingly isolated eclipse belongs to a larger pattern. Each eclipse is a member of a family. And like any family, each family has its own unique particular characteristics. I found that fascinating when I started that study. Now, for this particular year, there are 2 Saros cycles that are involved with the 4 eclipses that are happening. This first one coming up on April 30th is a partial solar eclipse, and it's at 10 degrees of Taurus. Now, the way the Saros cycle, turn the wrong page here. The way the Saros cycle affects this, the way it's described, these cycles, this one and the next one at 25 degrees of Taurus, a lunar eclipse, they're only about 2 weeks apart. These are concerned with the individual's relationship to father figures, authority figures, or the need to take responsibility or control. A time to accept the commitments that are presented, commitments which could occur due to another person's illness or another person's unreliability. Now, I found it really interesting when I was, let me go back here. When I was looking at these 2 particular eclipses, because the houses in the national chart that these fall on the 5th and 11th axis. That's children and the legislature. Children and groups of people with the same thoughts. That's this one. The May 15th one, or May 16th one, deals on the 6/12th axis, which is dealing with hospitals and health. So again, we come back to that concept of the individual's relationship to father figures, authority figures, and the need to take responsibility and control. How is that not affecting, legislative work? How is that not affecting the concepts of raising children? And when we're dealing with illnesses, having to take on responsibility because of people's illnesses, and we're looking at this particular eclipse falling over the realm of hospitals and health, it makes sense to me that these are following that Saros cycle. The next Saros cycle is dealing with being forceful and taking power. It has a manic flavor to it, like a great force of strength manifesting itself in interpersonal affairs, relationships, and relating to others. Individuals experiencing this Saros cycle may experience sudden events like falling in or out of love or sudden sexual encounters. Don't forget, all of these are in Taurus and Scorpio, which are the very sensual signs. The individual may also exert a huge effort in some kind of group activity. Well, when do these 2 occur? October 25th and November 8th. What's going on at that time? The midterm elections. These both fall in the 5th, 11th house axis. In mundane astrology, the 11th house rules the House of Representatives and the Senate, rules the legislative branch. So it makes perfect sense to me that there is activity going on with these particular signs. The themes that we look at for this year for eclipses: sensual energy versus sexual energy, money, all about Taurus, versus power, fertility and creation versus death and regeneration, stability, that's all Taurus wants, maintaining the status quo. Scorpio is all about transformation. How do we regenerate what was into what will be? All things concrete, all emotional bonds. I mean, even think about the time of year when these two particular signs occur in the northern hemisphere at any rate. We're looking at the most active agricultural growth period of the year, and the period of the year when we are closing down and making the last harvest for being able to get the gardens quiet and ready for a cold winter and then rejuvenation in the year to come. So it's really interesting to me that we're dealing with such very concrete and tangible issues in this particular year, when there's so many things that are tangible, concrete, that we are facing on a national level. Hope that makes sense. So it's kind of, there's a lot going. I had played a little bit with looking at the eclipses in each of individuals' houses, but I think that'll just take up time when we could look at other things. So I'll move on. The retrogrades, good old Mercury retrograde. Okay, so this quick table, this table is going to be reproduced, by the way, in the handout that will be available as of tomorrow. As you can see, we have 4 Mercury retrograde periods in this particular time. We also have a Venus retrograde that we're in right now. It's going to be finishing up. Mars, all of the planets. Look at this period here. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planets all in retrograde. But don't make yourself crazy. Pluto is retrograde half the year. It's always in shadow, or it's always in retrograde, is one way to think about it. Retrogrades are not something to be frightened of. They're not something to avoid. They are simply a period of inward reflection where the energy of the planet is driving itself inward. You're looking at the inner parts of communication, the inner parts. What is it that makes me want to connect with others, Venus? What is it that makes me what motivates me? What gets me out of bed in the morning? That's Mars. What is it that I have faith in? And I need to examine that, Jupiter. Okay, makes sense? So the first periods of Mercury retrograde are going to be January 14th, and that will last until February 3rd. The entire period we have the shadow period ahead of it and a shadow period after it, while Mercury is getting itself back into its normal cruising altitude, shall we say. And as I say, the handout that you will be getting via email will give you all of the dates for those. When you're dealing with a Mercury retrograde, you're looking at rethinking, rewriting, revising, revisiting, reviewing, redoing again, and thinking about things. It's really important to pay attention to words. The words that you say, the words that you write, the words that you sign on the dotted line, your name. All of these things during this time period are crucial. I don't recommend signing any major contracts during this period. Of course, there are times you can't get around it. If you're offered a job and you need one, you're going to sign on that dotted line. I would say make sure you read the fine print. Make sure you take the time to thoroughly read every bit of material that's there. Because the thing that I have found to be the case with Mercury retrograde and going ahead and making those decisions of signing on the dotted line, something will come back that things are not exactly the way you expected them to be. There may be some clause in that contract that doesn't cover a certain part of your coverage, let's say, or it doesn't cover, it didn't spell out in no uncertain terms how much vacation time you were going to get. That was all on a verbal basis, and it may come back to haunt you by you not being able to get the kind of vacation you had thought you were agreeing to. These are the kinds of things that come up with Mercury retrograde. So I would not say absolutely do not, sign any contracts, make any purchases. Just be really careful that you follow everything up as much as you possibly can. Have other people look at things as well. So there's 4 periods, as I say. The first one is now in January. There's going to be the second from May 10th to June 3rd, and those are in the signs of Gemini and Taurus. The third is in September 9th through October 2nd, and those are in the signs of Libra and Virgo. Last year, they were just in the air signs. They were just in Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. This time, because we've moved a little bit further ahead, we're bringing the next signs in as well. And then finally, this last one, December 29th through January 18th, will be all in the sign of Capricorn. We move now into the earth signs with this particular Mercury retrograde. Venus retrograde right now has been going on since December 19th. It'll be in place until January 29th. Then it will be in its shadow until March 1st. So again, I would say this is not the time to buy a Lexus. This is not Mercury. I mean, this is not the time for luxury purchases. These are the times. It's also not the time. I would definitely say it's not the time to completely change your hairstyle or to get a tattoo. Anything that is semi-permanent, because that would be in the realm of what was I thinking when you finished with the Mercury or the Venus period. We're used to thinking of Venus as the planet of love, a benefic planet, one with totally positive vibes. And to be fair, it mostly is. But Venus also rules connectedness. It rules money. And when it comes to connectedness, you have to think, is it healthy or is it unhealthy? Because Venus just wants you to connect. It's not discerning. It's not, is this the right connection for me? It just wants connection. Understand? Merging is what it's looking for. So when you get a Venus retrograde, you're being asked to look back at all of those connections in your life and review them. Are they healthy for me? Am I the best person I could be when I'm in connection with this other soul? Am I the right for them? Is another one to think about. So when Venus is in retrograde, you're going to see difficulties at the emotional and sentimental levels. Everything that this planet represents is felt in a much more reserved way, a much more timid way. You're not going to be effusive with love during Venus, when Venus is in retrograde. Instead, your thoughts are going to be more reserved, accessible to you, but not necessarily others. The kind of thing that you want to avoid during a Venus retrograde from a relationship standpoint is quite honestly starting a new relationship and committing to it immediately. Give that new relationship time. See if it still feels right when that period is finished. Don't just jump right in with both feet. It's not a time to make a huge investment in art, make a huge investment in music, the arts, creativity, that kind of thing, because what looks great to you right now may not when the retrograde period is over. What you should be doing, though, is making plans, asking yourself, what do I want? If you wanted to redo the decorating in your home, this is a period right now that would be perfect for you to be thinking about, what color do I think would work well for me? What would be a soothing color for the bedroom? What would be an exciting color for my office? That kind of thing. Think about what's going to do research, consumer reports. What's the best buy, the best rated washing and dryer, whatever it might happen to be that you want to be able to get. Now, of course, if it's broken down, you might have to go ahead and make that purchase. But if you can, this is a good period to do your research and make your plans. Now, this happens to be in Capricorn this time. So this particular Venus retrograde is demanding that we are careful about building that structure, about looking at all of the foundations that we've put into place. It's also about committed love. Okay. As I think I mentioned earlier that as an astrologer, if I have 2 people coming to me who want to, have their charts looked at together in synastry, relationship astrology, I'm always going to be looking to where Capricorn or Saturn can connect with Venus in both charts, because that means that there's longevity, that there's a long-lasting connection that can be made here. So one of the things that you can do when Venus is in Capricorn is look at your own relationships and see which ones have the longevity that you want to have. Mars is also going to be in retrograde this year. It hasn't been since 2020. It's not every year. It's usually about 2 years apart before things happen, and it won't happen again until December of 2024. When it will go into its shadow on September 3rd, but it actually starts to become accurate as of October 30th of this year. It will go retrograde, and it'll be in Gemini, and it won't station and go back direct again until into January. Whoop. These should not be. These should actually say 2021 and 2022. My apologies, Corby. Okay. Mercury retrograde. Mars is the planet of action, and when it's in retrograde, willpower, combativeness, all of these things come out when there's no outlet. There seems to be no outlet for them. So it can be a chaotic time for you. It truly can. One of the things that you want to be able to think about when you're doing a Mars retrograde is try really hard not to start a fight. Do your best to avoid getting into an argument. Instead, articulate what you want. And if you're starting the fight because you don't know what you want, then you need to sit back and figure that out. You need to figure out, how do I become aware and present in this moment? Because Mars always wants you thinking about the next moment. It always wants you thinking about, where do I want to be 10 minutes from now? I want to challenge myself to the next level. Mars retrograde wants you to be present. What do I need now? What do I want now? And how will I get that? It's also a really good time to reassess your own behavior when it comes to sex and connecting with other people. How is this? Is it's most healthy for you? Are you doing exactly what you should be in order to be able to gain the relationships that you're looking for? So the other dates, I'll be talking about the larger planets, but those are the inner planets. Those are the ones that tend to wreak the most havoc on us individually. Now, when I talk about the outer planets and the Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and when I talk about the interpersonal planets, Saturn and Jupiter, I always try to go from the outside, the farthest out coming in, because they're the slowest. Pluto is huge. It takes 248 years for this planet to go all the way around, the sun. So the idea that, we're going to be enjoying the Pluto return for the United States is pretty cool, because the average human being does not live to 240 years. This particular planet has been in Capricorn since January of 2008, and it's going to be in Capricorn until January of 2024. Why am I bringing that up? Because this is a period of remarkable transformation for all of the structures in your life. Capricorn is talking about the structures of your life. So wherever Capricorn rests in your chart, whatever house, whatever area of your life, you are coming to the end of the period of Pluto making changes there. You're coming to the end of the period of Pluto completely raising the playing field and laying it bare for you to start rebuilding again. I would say it'll be wrapping up soon, so don't waste your time and energy trying to fight the changes. Embrace the changes and move forward. You will be so glad you did after the change is done. Okay? Pluto represents power and the need to strengthen your own inner power, stepping into your own power. But also it talks about the power that is exerted on you. So it's trying to become aware of the response you have to those exerting power on you from outer situations. There's a reason that Pluto moves so slowly, and it's because its effects, the effects that this planet has on us as individuals as well as on the collective, the planet, are massive. They're huge, and they take a long time to develop, a long time to accrue over time. If you think about roughly 20 years ago, that was the last time Pluto was in in that period for you? What was going on then for you? You know, what has changed? How are you different? How are you absolutely and categorically not the person you were then? Pluto had something to do with that change. Pluto squares tend to occur between the ages of roughly 36 and 61 years, depending on what sign it was in when you were born. And it's sextiles, which is a nice opportunity kind of aspect, about 30 years apart for your natal chart. Some people will actually experience a Pluto trine in their lives. For our generation, the people that were born like me around 1955, 58, 59, it happened around 1950 happened when you were about 50 to 53 years old. A few people in our generation might even get to experience a Pluto opposition to their nearest natal Pluto. Mine will be in 2044 when I'm 87 years old. But whatever house Pluto transits, it forces you to accept major change. You can't get away from it. You can't get around it. You have to live through it. And the only thing you can do is take a breath and go for it. You will be amazed at the independence and power of self you'll experience on the other side. It really will make a difference for you. Right now, the planet is resting in the sign at 25 degrees of Capricorn. When it finishes the year, it will be at 27. That's how slow it moves. Only 2 degrees over the course of the year with retrograde going on. So I think what you're going to find is that people who have natal planets or sensitive parts of their chart anywhere from 23 to 29 degrees of Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, and Libra, the 4 cardinal signs, are going to be feeling that challenge, that push all year long to make change, to do something different, motivation and push and drive to do something. Action is the energy that's in place. For people who have those same degrees, 23 to 29 degrees of, say, Taurus and Virgo, you're going to have a much more fluid, easy flow of it. The earth signs will be in trine aspect to each other. So you may find the changes to be more easy for you. And those with 23 degrees to 29 degrees of Scorpio and Pisces may find opportunities presenting themselves that are transformational, because that's the sextile option for you. The next planet we're looking at is the planet Neptune. Neptune is sitting there in Pisces in rulership. It's been there since 2011, since 2011, April, and it will be there until 2026. So it too is starting to find the end of its run in Pisces, very much at home here. It's the sign that talks about spirituality and creativity, intuition. Anybody who is experiencing a lot of dreams right now and remembering them, or even finding some latent psychic ability, that's not at all unusual when Neptune is in its sign of Pisces. Wherever Neptune transits, though, be aware that whatever part of your chart, be aware that this is a dissolving energy. And deception is king, I guess is the best way to put it. Either we allow ourselves to believe lies, or we'll push through the murk and find our own idealistic truth. That's our choice to make with this particular transit. Let's say that Neptune is traveling through our 10th house. 10th house talks about what's our social status, what's our public persona, how are we seen by the public at large, our job, our vocation. Well, if the energy of Neptune is coming through, then it's going to make all efforts to benefit ourselves fall flat. If you are in the, let's say, medical field, or in the spirit, if you are in some kind of religious or spiritual field, or work with the arts in some way, you may find that you are having some advancement because Neptune rules those things. But if you're in big business, the only way that you're going to find yourself advancing at all is by making sure that your goal is for somebody else to benefit. Interesting, no? Unless you work I talked about that, sorry. The one thing that you will absolutely not succeed at is any kind of a self-advancing agenda. So just put that on the back burner. Just put it on the back burner for now. consult a good astrologer to find out what else you could be doing to be able to help your career advance. But really pushing your own agenda just is not going to fly if Neptune is coming through your 10th house. This is the time when nobody sees you. Where you are the not just the man behind the curtain. You are behind the curtain. You're behind the door. You could be doing some of your best work, and somebody else will get credit for it. That's just the way the energy works. Okay. However, it's also the time to dream big. So let's say you do have Neptune coming through the 10th, and you know that what you're doing right now is not what you want to be doing. Then plan. This is the time to dream. What do I want to do? What is it that I need to get under my belt? What experience, what training, what study do I need to take advantage of in order to be able to make the move when I can, when it's this particular planet is no longer having such an effect on my public life? So there are ways to deal with it. There really are. I would say that the sensitive points are 19 to 23 degrees of Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius. So those of you who were born in the later parts of those 4 signs, you may be finding you're under a lot of challenge right now, because that's the square, the conjunction, and the opposition angles that we're talking about. Those are all challenging angles. If you have 19 to 23 degrees of Cancer or Scorpio that are important in your chart, you're the ones that are experiencing the trine energy. You're getting that easy flow. And those of you with 19 to 23 degrees of Taurus and Capricorn, you're the ones that are dealing with the sextile. You may be getting some wonderful opportunities for creative expression coming through for you. You could be having a chance to be able to find a new spiritual path being offered to you at this point in time. Those are the kinds of things that you look for with those particular signs. What do you want to avoid doing when we have Neptune in retrograde? It's going to be in retrograde from June 27th until December 3rd. You want to avoid looking back in nostalgia and getting lost. How many of you know the Harry Potter series where Harry sits in front of that mirror that shows him his greatest desires? And what was it Dumbledore said? He said that so many people end up losing their lives because they start dreaming of what could be instead of living in the now. Okay. So this is a time to not fall into escapism, running away, or, losing yourself in the past. Instead, become more spiritual, get out in nature more, and embrace the positive energies that can be surrounding you. The next big planet is Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus right now. It has been since March of 2019, and it's going to be there until April of 2026. It takes about 84 years to go around the planet. It's interesting that Uranus is very much akin to our personal freedoms, and its orbit is very close to the basic lifespan of a human being, about 84 years. It's the planet of revolution, technology, and powerfully destructive energies as well. Think of it as, if Neptune is the dissolving energy and Pluto is the nuclear explosion energy, the Uranus is like the thunderbolt, the lightning bolt, kind of energy. It's totally unexpected, comes out of nowhere, but it's definitely change. So I would say when you're thinking of Taurus, you're thinking of the sign of security. So Uranus and Taurus don't necessarily like each other, and they're not super comfortable together. Look for big changes in weather patterns, because Uranus has a lot to do with weather patterns during this time. Look at how the weather has changed just in this country alone and globally because of, let's just say globally. To get through these periods, to get through the Uranus and Taurus transit, because it's so uncomfortable, what we have to do is let go of the concept of what was and instead embrace the potential of what can be. Taurus likes the status quo. The hardest thing Taurus needs to do is to let go of what they know so that they can become acquainted with what will be. Uranus has the energy to help you do that. It really, really does. Whatever house Uranus travels through in your chart, that's where you're going to have change. When I teach astrology, I tell my students that the only thing that a predictive astrologer can talk about when it comes to Uranus is, I have no idea what is going to happen, just that it's going to happen in the realm of, and talk about that particular house. So wherever Uranus touches your lives, you just have to realize that it's usually preceded by an internal restlessness. Something isn't right. Something isn't exactly as you were meant to live it. And that's why Uranus has come into that part of your life, to make that change. You maybe couldn't do it. So Uranus comes in and explosively makes it happen for you. Lightning fast intuitive leaps are associated with Uranus too. So if Uranus touches on your native Mercury, don't be surprised if you come up with all these brilliant ideas that you normally don't come up with, but boy, they're out of nowhere, and there they come. Uranus is going to be retrograde in the heavens from August 24th this year to January 22nd. What do you avoid during a Uranus retrograde period? Making too many changes in your life. It's asking you instead to look at, what does the group need? Okay. Uranus does want to make change. So of course, when it goes retrograde, you're still going to want to make the change. Instead of making it for your benefit, they'll make it for the group. Aquarius, which is akin to Uranus and has an affinity with Uranus. It's all about what's going to level the playing field. What will be good for the many? And that's one way to get through that period. Look at ways to make change that will benefit more than just yourself. People with sensitive points at 17 to 20 degrees of Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, the 4 fixed signs, they are the ones that are feeling most of the challenges that were going on. So if you were born in the later parts of those 4 signs, you're probably starting to feel, or have been feeling, those particular challenges, the pushes to make change. That's the conjunction, the square, and the opposition aspects. Those of us with 17 to 20 degrees of Virgo and Capricorn that are sensitive parts of our chart are the ones experiencing the easy flow. And then we've got that 17 degrees to 20 degrees of Pisces and Cancer. This is where the unexpectedly creative and spiritual opportunities start flowing in for you. Okay? Those are the outer planets. Now, the 2 interpersonal planets. Saturn is in Aquarius. It's almost finished its run. It usually runs for about 2.5 years in any given sign. It's been in Aquarius since December 17th of 2020, and it will be there until March of 2023. It takes about 29.5 years to go all the way around the zodiac, all the way around the sun. It entered Aquarius with this wonderful harbinger of great technological acumen. I mean, I loved it at the time. What were you doing 30 years ago that was related to the idea of taking control of technology? Because that was roughly the same thing. That was when Saturn was in Aquarius the last time for you. Saturn and Aquarius energy is really interesting from a social standpoint, because we look at Saturn as a social planet, an interpersonal planet. The energy of Saturn and Aquarius is really energy that's going to pit that need for control that Saturn has, and order. Safety equals, I know exactly what's coming next. The control equals safety, up against the acceptance of the nonconformity of life. The individuality, demanding equality, which is very Aquarian, and better representation for marginalized parts of our society, which is Aquarian, and taking control of that, which is Saturn. Saturn rules this sign. So I guess one way you could put that is declaring war on tyranny is a really good way to describe the energy of Saturn in Aquarius. One of the things that you want to be able to do is create safe boundaries in which to be able to be free. That's what Saturn in Aquarius is asking you to be able to do. Let's see. Saturn is going to be retrograde this year from June 4th through October 22nd. And it governs the elements of time for individuals to be able to build themselves up. So the planet can refer to studies. It can refer to training that you want to do, literally construction in terms of building. It can also be the planet of delays and roadblocks and limitations. And the reason it does that, as I mentioned to you earlier, Saturn will slow you down when you need to slow down so you don't miss an essential step. So Saturn retrograde encourages us to embrace that alone time that we have in order to better understand other people through our own limitations. Make sense? When we can see where our boundaries are, we can start to notice where others' boundaries are and respect them. So it's a fine point, I realize, but it's a good one to think about. When Saturn is in retrograde, be respectful of others' boundaries more than ever is a good way to look at that. One thing you shouldn't do during this period, don't start a construction project during Saturn in retrograde, because it's like you'll find out when you got halfway finished that the cornerstone was laid wrong, or that you had something not done to scale. It can be very frustrating. What you can do is to continue with a task that you had started in the past, but that you had to halt for some reason. I'm a needle worker. I do a lot of knitting and cross stitching and crocheting. So I pick up a lot of unfinished objects, UFOs, during the Saturn in retrograde period, so I can get those finished. And it's a good way to revisit work you have done and finish it up. It's a good way, especially in a quiet environment, which is what Saturn likes to have. Finally, we have the planet Jupiter. Good old Jupiter, the big gas giant of the solar system. And it's going to be in both Pisces, as you're aware, and in Aries this year. It entered Pisces on December 29th, and it will be there until, I believe, it enters Aries on May 10th. There's going to be some retrograde cycles in there as well. Excuse me, losing my voice. Jupiter gives us the permission to dream big. So when Jupiter goes into retrograde, we're looking at the dream big within. How can we be our best inner selves? Wherever Jupiter lives in our chart is where we need to have faith. Let's say Jupiter happens to rest in the first house for you. Somebody with Jupiter in the first comes across as very highly confident, but they're probably people who worry about whether or not they know they're capable. Somebody with Jupiter in the 10th needs to learn to have faith in themselves in the workforce, in the public eye. Somebody with Jupiter in the fourth house needs to have faith in the value of family, in the value and the power of the people of like mind coming together to support you, or even of your own emotional foundations. So it's an interesting thing to look through, but it's not just religion and philosophy. It's that concept of in what things do we have faith? Where do we put our faith, and where should we? We talked about that. What to do during a Jupiter retrograde, because Jupiter is going to be retrograde from July 28th until November 23rd this year. What you want to avoid during the phase of time when Jupiter's in retrograde is pursuing the path that isn't yours. Trying to force yourself to be and follow the dictums of what other people think your life should be. Sounds a lot like Uranus. You ought to be taking a step back, reviewing how you do things, how you think about things, redefine your personal philosophy. When Jupiter is in retrograde, it's the best possible time to truly think about what you believe, what it is that you believe is your raison d'etre. Why are you here? What is your purpose in life? And the kind of things to anticipate when Jupiter goes retrograde is that it's linked to social norms. Jupiter is all about the legal system and justice, deep values. So it has really deep connections with spirituality and faith, and it's been known to bring out a lot of extra enthusiasm in folks. So when it goes into retrograde, you may notice that you start to feel a little more somber, a little more reserved. You're laughing on the inside. It's one way to look at it. Whew, threw a lot at you. And I'm wondering if anyone has any questions.
Well, we're going to go back, if you're okay with that, Pat, to some of the questions we had before.
Absolutely.
And then again, let everybody know, because there is a lag, so it'll take a little bit for them to get on their typing. And thank you guys so much for interacting so much and asking all the questions.
I'm so glad there are.
Mm-hmm. And I know, Pat, you can see that stream as well.
I'm trying
so
to
we
get
talked
out
about
of
Mercury,
this.
Venus retrograde.
Hold
One of the
on.
questions I thought was really awesome
Yeah. Okay.
was from St. Pepe about, I am under the impression that this year is the start and the end of a 200-some year cycle that also happened the same time as American Revolution. Is that something that could affect the country, and what is that cycle?
That's a really good question. It's not one that I've researched, so I don't feel super comfortable talking about it because, frankly, I don't know enough about it to be effective. So I'll come right out and say that. When I talk about the predictions, which is the next thing coming up, the last section of our talk, I will be talking about the Pluto conjunction, which is a 250 almost, 248 year cycle. So that may deal with some of what St. Pepe is describing.
Okay.
Okay. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
And another question here. Thanks for clarifying about the 21, 22 on the retrograde slide there.
Yeah. I'll fix it. I promise.
So Kat
will be perfect.
Kat, I believe we'll get this into the predictions part, but I will read the question still out loud for Pat to hear. Is the astrology revealing anything around mandates and freedoms?
Yes. You will be hearing that in the next section.
Okay. And then is it safe to start a new artistic music project soon after the 19th?
The 19th of this month?
I think it was January of 19th. I think that's what they referred to. I think that's what they're referring to.
I've got so many things running through my head right now. We'll be coming out of. Let me double check on that, and I will take a look at the. Forgive me. I've got so many. Like I say, I've got so many charts going through my head right now. I'm trying to think. Starting a creative project is always a good thing when you're in Venus, and we're in a Venus retrograde right now. I would wait till Venus retrograde is over because it may not end up the way you envision it, or it may end up exactly as you envision it now, but you may not like it when you see it after the retrograde is finished. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And again,
the creative aspect would be related to the Venus retrograde that's going on. I would wait till Venus retrograde is finished. Think about it now, plan it now, but don't start executing it.
If anyone needs clarification of that, cool. One of the things that I love, St. Pepe said, so glad you're honest about, not having researched that. That actually brings into a question I would like to ask, if that's okay.
Sure.
When we have Jupiter in Pisces here, with that aspect of expansion when it comes to all that Piscean energy, do we have the potential to get involved in cults, not have discernment when it comes to spiritual things? We have a lot of people having their spiritual awakening now on the planet after 2020 and 2021. So what does that look like? And do you have any advice or wisdom for either practitioners out there of how we can help our clients to not get stuck in that, lack of discernment and get caught up in the riffraff, or as well as anybody out there listening? What advice or wisdom do you have for that?
The Jupiter in Pisces situation, as well as the upcoming Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, are all going to heighten our desire for the ideal. Let me see if I can make this very long answer short. If you need to twist yourself into a pretzel to find data and information and facts to match what you want reality to be, the chances are you're deceiving yourself. if you have to work really, really hard to make facts, quote unquote, look like truth, it probably isn't. Now, that being said, just remember that this period of time is very easy for us to deceive ourselves. And we could be going at talk about rose-colored glasses. You could be truly going at this with the best of intentions, with hoping you're sharing with people the best possible information. But I think listening to your inner voice is probably going to be the wisest route to take. As I say, if you have to work very hard to make your point of view align with what is considered to be reality, then the chances are that it is not reality. Am I answering the question?
I think so. If anyone else needs clarity, let us know. When you're talking about your rose-colored glasses, I think I have my Jupiter and Pisces glasses right here. Or this kaleido, I was like, yeah, that's like you're not really seeing, correctly. I just want to make sure, because we have an amazing group of community members here and practitioners out there. I want to make sure that no one gets caught up in, some of the stuff that we see sometimes.
And the hard thing is that I have to be extremely careful how I articulate this. I mean no disrespect to anyone, but the reality is truth is truth. Science is science. And when you have to manipulate it to make it fit what your belief structure is, that's when you need to examine things. And I mean, that is my opinion, and that is my view of the astrology that I have worked with. But, your mileage may vary.
Yeah. And I will say, I love that as for you as an astrologer too, Pat, and any other really amazing ethical practitioner out there, just you stating this is my opinion and trying to separate that, because, as readers, people really do take a lot of this stuff very seriously and take it to heart. Mm-hmm. And it always is a matter of interpretation, a matter of you set down, this is what I'm, my personal perspective. So thank you so much for doing that. We continue
Absolutely.
to I love you so much for that. The other thing is, Kat asked about new romance. What about old but happily married person? Lots about new romance, she said, but what about an old and happily married person for
going through Venus retrograde? Kat,
is that what you mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that makes sense of what where the question came from, but
okay. Well, then absolutely. What you're doing is revisiting. Yes, you're revisiting why you were in love the first place. How have you changed? I mean, I'll use my husband and I as an example. We've been married going on 43 years.
Something like that.
When did I get old? And we are not the people we were 43 years ago, but we discover more and more new things about each other each and every year. Some are good, some are not so good. But for the most part, we know that we're still with the right person because we evaluate that each and every year. Venus in retrograde helps us do that. We also had an experience of Pluto going through the seventh. Let me back up. My husband and I have an ascendant. The degree of the first part of our chart is almost exactly the same, within just a couple of degrees of each other. So when the planets hit each of our houses, it hits it for both of us. Pluto went through our seventh house at a time when we needed to figure out who we were as a married couple. And it was fascinating to watch how each of us dealt with that change. There was no doubt about it. We were not the same couple we were when we had married when we met in 1978. But it didn't mean the relationship was over. It simply means that we grew and changed. So Pluto is not always this horrible thing. And Venus retrograde will not always turn over these horrible, oh my God, it's ending. It can sometimes allow you to rediscover the most amazing reasons why you got together in the first place. Hope that helps.
And on the note with the Jupiter as well in Pisces, a lot of times after like crazy chaos in the world, we're not through it yet, but we see a renaissance and music, art, poetry. We need some really good movies and really good music, and not just this stuff that's repeat. Do you feel there's anything with that Jupiter moving into Pisces that we might see
Absolutely.
Some more like epic books or epic movies or really great
Epic
musicians
movies
come
in
out.
particular. Neptune rules film and videographers. Jupiter rules publishing. I wouldn't be at all surprised. And of course, Neptune rules dance and art. And I think we may have a whole new burst of incredible communication coming through in this Jupiter in Pisces and Jupiter conjunct Neptune phase. Because don't forget, art is communication. Art is information. Music is information. All of these just happen at different frequencies. So they're going to be reaching different people. I find it fascinating that many people for whom people on the autistic spectrum may find amazing outlets becoming available to them with Jupiter in Pisces, because they're going to be getting information through new means and forms in art, music, and all different kinds of color that could be coming their way. I think it's going to be a very exciting period. It wouldn't surprise me.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah, there could be a whole new genre of music, of art that comes into play during this year. That at least gets gets the seminal seeds started. Yeah.
I wanted to also go back. Happy anniversary, Kat, by the way. It's 20th year and wedding anniversary, she says.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah. I just want to ask one more question here before we move on here. It's from Wayne and Bella. They're asking about the best time to plan a vacation. They said this Capricorn needs to get away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, without seeing the charts, I'm hoping you have access and understand your own birth chart. I would say that anytime Jupiter is going anywhere near your 9th house, that's the house of travel. I would say that anytime Jupiter is making a good connection with Venus, because Venus is all about pleasure and joy, you kind of need to have an astrologer take a look at your chart to be sure on that, because they can look at all of the things like, well, how about the money? Yes, I need to go, but is the money going to work here, or do I have any potential Saturn action, frustration action that could be, I book this trip and then all I do is stand online just to find out the flight was canceled. That's Jupiter activity and Saturn activity. So I would say, I wish I could give you that answer, Wayne and Bella, but I think you're going to need to have somebody take a look at the chart.
Yeah. Oh, and happy anniversary to Wayne and Bella too.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, guys, we'll move into the predictions. This is the thing we've all been waiting for. We all wait for this, of course. And then we'll have questions at the end. Correct, Pat?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Okay, here we go. Now,
and St. Pepe said while you're pulling it up, maybe aliens will show up this year.
Hey, anything's possible.
That'd be awesome.
Anything is possible. One of the things I want to stress again. Let's go back here. Okay. The one thing I want to stress again, this is not coming at these predictions from any political standpoint. I simply read what I see. I'm going by the rules of mundane astrology. Okay. So let's go ahead then and get started. Predictions for 2022. You need to be aware that this particular period right now, which is the period of, whoops, no, that's not what I wanted. Hang on, stop sharing. Somehow I ended up on the wrong place. Well, I can still talk about this while that's going on.
And we can assume if it says 2021 again, it's actually 2022 in the slideshow, right?
Predictions for 2022. That's the one I want right there.
Okay, just want to make sure because I know people are asking about that. If it says 2021, it's just a typo over when it's 2022 in the slideshow.
Yep. The thing that is most important to remember is that we're in incredible transformation.
Pat, just so you know, I don't have your slideshow up, just to let you know.
Ooh,
I don't have your screen share.
Why is it not? Share screen. Share screen. Welcome to our process.
It was amazing last year. We had no issues again.
No issues. I know. There, do you have it now?
I do. All right, awesome.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
This is the period of time where the USA is experiencing an exact Pluto return. Remember how I had said that Pluto takes 248 years to go all the way around the zodiac, all the way around the sun. Nuclear energy transformation on an amazing scale, explosive destruction in order to make way for the new, regeneration. These are all words that we associate with Pluto. The thing that I find fascinating is that we have been dealing with this for the last several years, because as Pluto has moved closer to the same degree in which it rested the day on 1776, July 4th, 1776, that we became a country. The country was born and the natal chart was erected. The closer Pluto got, the more upheaval we've been experiencing as a country, correct? I think we can agree. So what is interesting to me as we move along here is that we're getting to a point in time where we're going to start seeing very, very profound change, a lot of upheaval. The big date, and I'll be going into each and every prediction as well, but the big date that I want people to keep in mind that concerns me, this one concerns me, is because here on March 20, how interesting is March 2nd, 2022 at 22:22 p.m. We're going to be having a conjunction of Pluto, Mars, and Venus all on top of natal Pluto. Pluto, Mars is violence. Pluto, Mars, Venus worries me about families, about women. It just the entire upheaval is a bit frightening to me. I would love to be able to see us not have to fall into total disarray in order to move forward. But unfortunately, the reality of Pluto is that it does raise what's there to make a path for what is to come. We've got other things going on as well. Remember, we talked about this earlier when I talked about the different dates. There's a lot of Saturn Mercury conjunction energy going on. Kara, you mentioned earlier talking about what's the word? Conspiracy theories maybe is a way to put it. I know that's a negative connotation. Please understand, I mean no disrespect when I say that. It's simply that there is a lot of Machiavellian persuasion that is related to Saturn Mercury. There's an inability to be able to communicate in an effective way. We also have the idea of the sun being conjunct Jupiter over here in Pisces, the idea of incredible self-confidence, feeling like I'm right. You know, there's an awful lot of bunches of energies that are coming together all on that one day. I would just truly ask that people be extremely careful. One additional thing popped out at me, and that is this. We have a yod that is working on this date as well. For an evolutionary astrologer, the energy of the yod, which is a sextile, that's this blue line here, a nice cooperative 60-degree angle between two planets, is forming like a weird extended triangle by these two long 150-degree angles. These are called quincunxes. They're incredibly difficult to work your way through, to manage, because what happens with a quincunx is that normally when there is a planetary aspect, there is some way for the planets to try to understand each other. Either they may be in the same mode, cardinal, fixed, mutable, or they may be similar in the elements talk to each other well. One, like fire and air will talk to each other, or water and earth will. When it comes to the inconjunct, nothing talks to each other. Total frustration, anxiety, adjustment. Think of two positive ends of a magnet being forced together and how it pushes itself apart. That's the energy that we feel with the inconjunct. So when we're dealing with an inconjunct on a karmic level, and there's so much karma that's involved in this particular year, we are looking at a planned adjustment that we booked into place, kind of, so to speak, before we incarnated. If it was in a person's chart, I would say you plan to do this in between lives. You plan to work on this particular aspect of your soul in between lives. This says to me that the United States planned to have to adjust to these issues. The idea of control, absolute control over individual freedom, Uranus, Saturn, Uranus. That's the concept of holding back from rebellion. Whoops, I did it again. Saturn and the Sun, holding back from exuding your own identity. The only way to get through it, the only way to work through a yod is by looking at the center point that rests between. And how fascinating to me that Chiron, the wounded healer, is resting in this particular chart. The way for us to get through this period is to embrace the fact of Chiron in Aries in the 5th. We cannot destroy the future for our children, 5th house, by insisting on the identity of the self, Aries, being more important than the cumulative consciousness, the collective. Whether we can convince everyone in the world or everyone in the country to be able to embrace this concept is, of course, kind of silly. But for those of us who are awake and aware, that's our job. That's our job. We're here to help the United States understand its future. We are not going to survive as a country until we listen to everybody. Everyone in this country has pain, and we cannot ignore anybody's. So that, to me, is saying that there's going to be some big shaking going on March 2nd. All right. Predictions for the period of Capricorn's ingress, when the sun moved into Capricorn back on December 20th, 2021, through the period just before it turns to Aries this year in March of 2022. These are straightforward indicators from looking at the chart of the country for those dates. So indicators are showing that this is a good period for the country, but not necessarily for the leader himself, because there is a lack of support by the masses, or a lack of popularity with the masses. And this is kind of indicated when we look at right now the approval rate for the president at this point in time. We're doing pretty well. I mean, many of us are doing better than we were. Some of us are not, but many are doing better than we used to be. But there's a lot of dissatisfaction with where we are right now. I also think that there's going to be a lot of potential for continued COVID issues related to schools and children throughout this time period. Several indicators were showing that there is frustration, that there is all kinds of anger, a lot of power struggles related to this particular issue, particularly when it relates to education and kids. There's no doubt about it. This entire year, not just for this particular ingress period, but for the entire year, the stock market is going to be up and down and up and down and up and down. There's just no way to plan for anything else. It looks like a complete amount of moon activity related to second house and the finances of the country. And whenever the moon is involved, it's just like the waves, just like the incredible amount of fluctuations that go on with a watery kind of a situation. So don't expect it to go up and stay up for quite a while. I think during this period also, there's a lot of indicators that say that many amusements, restaurants, theaters, musical programs, I think we may have another bit of a lockdown in terms of not everybody's going to be able to continue to participate. I clearly was looking at Broadway going dark again as a possibility. That would be really sad, but I think it is a possibility. Hospitals and medical staff are already, I mean, this is already showing itself being pushed right up to the edge to 100% capacity and beyond. Someone asked me, what about the potential for, people being turned away? I would hate to see that happen. I pray it does not, but the potential is there. There is a real concern to me in the indicators that are showing potential domestic violence on the rise, crime against women and children, against families. There's a lot of anger, a tremendous amount of anger in this particular ingress's chart that is not being expressed in a healthy way. I'm seeing that people at large, the populace, are at odds with the minority party in power at the moment. This could also be, it's interesting because it's represented by Mercury. This could also be personified in the Speaker of the House, in Ms. Pelosi's interactions with the party in the minority. So I don't see a whole lot of positive interaction, shall we say, during this particular period of time. Interestingly, the general condition of the country and her people are, kind of okay. It's Neptune, so it's kind of vague and dreamy and that kind of thing. So that's possibly an indicator as to why charities and philanthropies are potentially doing extremely well. People want to make a difference. They want to help. They want to reach out and make change and make life better for people who are not as lucky as they are. So it's not at all unusual to see this kind of support being shown. I do see several indicators for scientific breakthroughs of some kind and legislation to fund these kinds of things. For some reason, the space race started coming back into my head, and I started wondering if there was another private launch that's being scheduled. Forgive me, I don't know. But that was the kind of thing that kept popping into my head while I was looking through this. Big surprise. The populace, the people at large are at odds with the party and the minority. That's simply a case of looking at, look at polls that'll follow that through. And it's interesting that you brought up the question, Kara, earlier about, conspiracy theories. There's a way, though, that, this could be turned on its head. Rather than making it negative, how about if instead of conspiracy theories, we all lean towards collective idealism? Because that's also what Neptune represents. Neptune does represent deceit, deceiving yourself, lies, but it can also be about the best in people. And that's really what I would love to start seeing the energy get pushed towards. And those of us who are in the position as light workers, that's what we need to be working on. That's what we need to be articulating. That's the words you must use right speech to be able to promote. So I think that's going to be my clarion cry for this particular period. I have a sensation that we're going to see a number of resignations from the legislative branch, either the Senate or the House of Representatives, and it's going to be due to scandal. What's interesting to me is I don't think it's scandals. That's not the feeling I'm getting. The feeling I'm getting here is an overreach of power. Someone who tried at any cost to have control, to hang on to control, and they end up losing it all because they tried to overreach. So I think we may find between now and the beginning of the Aries ingress that there'll be a number of top-level politicians on both sides of the aisle who will have a comeuppance of some kind. I also see a lot of indicators to bereavements in the Senate or in the House, and that could either be actual Congress people or senators who pass, or their families suffer from losses. There seems to be a lot of indicators of mortality in this particular ingress. This was interesting to me. There is the potential, and I'm going to go on the record saying I almost didn't write this down because it just seems so completely impossible to me, but I've got to say it because this is what I saw. There is the potential for the passing or the resignation or retirement, I guess is the best way to put it, of either a Supreme Court or High Court justice, somebody that's in the public eye. The thing that amazes me is that according to the astrology, there's actually going to be a lot less difficulty in gaining confirmation for this particular individual, the new replacement person, than we would have dreamed. We've gone through this period of, you're not going to get a judge no matter what happens. We've been through that for how long now? And I'm not seeing that in this particular ingress. So I find that fascinating. Whether it's reality or not, that's what I saw. And then finally for this, I think it's finally for this particular period, the potential for philanthropic leaders, the media, communication outlets, anybody in their legal profession, those in power, they have to work hard with the president and or his designees in order to assist each other. This deeply entrenched partisanship can be worked through via negotiation and communication skills. The population, the people, must be listened to in order for us to move forward as a country. One thing I will say that I saw, a lot of Venus activity and a lot of legislator activity. So to me, there's a couple of options here. A patient but powerful woman in power may be martyred. Now, whether that's a literal, put to death and she becomes the image of what can be, or Roe versus Wade tumbles, some other legislation that deals with the rights of either women's reproductive rights or women in general, will cause an outcry that the right just did not see coming. There is something that is going to be happening that will, a woman will lead, is the best way I can put it. There's something related to either a specific woman or the concept of the work of women will be very, very much in the forefront. Now, Aries. The Aries ingress, we have Gemini resting on the ascendant for this particular period of time between the beginning of Aries and the beginning of the Cancer ingress. It's weird because to me, it really talks about this. Gemini on the ascendant is constant search for information, but not necessarily processing the information you find. That's more Sagittarius. I guess the way to put it, Mercury is the planet that rules the ascendant in this particular period, but it's in Pisces, which is in its fall. That's astrologies. To put it into English, Mercury is in its weakest possible sign, the most ineffective and most difficult at making communication clear. Okay. So to me, it kind of is the marker of, is this an indicator of the scientist who keeps on looking for data that will only support their theory rather than seeing the data that's there and being willing to adjust their own belief system? For what it's worth, I think that, that whole question of what is truth is going to be a big issue during this period of time. Neptune is really prominent in this chart. So there's going to be a lot of deception, self-delusion, the things that we've been talking about previously. Okay. The national death rate, sadly, will continue to toll heavily, particularly on our most elderly members of society and on kids. That was sad to me, but it was unmistakable. Pluto resting in the 8th house, making conjunctions or making connections with both Saturn and the 5th house, the moon in the 5th house. So that is a reality, unfortunately, that we're going to have to continue to deal with. But I see a positive coming out of that. There's the potential there for a grassroots women's movement of some kind, whether it's a mother's movement specifically fighting mortality rate for kids, whether it's the children, the adult children of the elderly fighting against, the elderly being sacrificed for the benefit of the rest of the group. I don't know. I have no idea. But in some way, women are going to be involved in raising up from the grassroots level and having a really loud voice in the world. And that's sad that it's needed, but very exciting on the standpoint of watching the population have their voice heard. There's going to be some very high-profile legal cases surrounding laws affecting women's rights and/or issues that they come to a head during this period. It wouldn't surprise me at all for Roe v. Wade to be overturned during this period of time. Interestingly, it appears to be a very good period for technology and trade, especially foreign trade. But there are elements of, how do I put this? But of really entrenched betrayal and trust issues on the people who are doing the negotiating now. It's kind of like if we could just get out of the room the old school politicians who've been doing this forever and we're not getting anywhere, and instead put in people who are able to look at this and argue the case with logic and without emotion, without vitriol and accusation and anger. There's way too much emotion connected to this whole question here. So I would say it would be cool if we could manage to somehow have diplomacy that didn't involve a whole lot of breastfeeding and histrionics, I guess is the best way to put it. Yeah, we need logical, cool-headed diplomacy. This one is interesting to me. I'm seeing a very real antagonistic relationship with Russia, but I'm not seeing war. Mars is not involved here, but trade, Mercury is. Mercury and Uranus. So I'm seeing sudden trade issues related to whatever political thing is going on right now that could actually be heavy sanctions, embargoes, total stopping of trade back and forth. I'm not sure what it is, but the reason I say it's Russia is that Aquarius is so deeply involved, and Aquarius rules Russia. That's the sign that rules Russia. So for whatever reason, I think during this period of March 20th to June 20th, we may start to see some hardball being played on a trade platform with that particular foreign nation. The next phase is the period of Cancer ingress. This is June 21st, right up until Libra, September 20th. And it's interesting. This is something that's sort of going on for the whole year. This continuing to be promising for the leader in the country, even though there's unpopularity that he's dealing with. And, there's so many things that were contradictory in all of these. And it occurred to me that at first I was thinking, and I was speaking with a fellow reader, and we had the concept of the idea of two leaders of the country. And I don't think it's that, because that would require extrapolation of data rather than looking at the astrology. Instead, I think we have two countries. We have two mindsets, two populations that are both trying to occupy the same space at the same time. And we all know what physics says about that. So I think what we're dealing with is this constant jockeying for position of which of the two populations is the one that will be heard. Is there a way to be able to allow both to be heard? And we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. So again, we're dealing with the continuing of the country not falling under, but the leader not having the support that anybody would like them to see. This was interesting. The country's health remains questionable, but not worse. It's possible that during this period, we may start to finally get a breather. Poor choice of words when it comes to the actual illness that we're talking about, but the pandemic may start to ease back again. And it's not surprising considering the time of the year. More people are outside and being able to enjoy fresh air. But it does look like the country's health, while questionable, is not in danger as we've seen it for the previous two sections. The idea of the continued trade issue question is definitely in place. But what's interesting, it's not just political issues, but the actual supply chain. There's something that is going to shift when it comes to supply chain issues, the actual shipping, because we've got a lot of shipping things going on in this particular ingress. Excuse me. The leader, the president, will doggedly hang on, trying as hard as he can to use diplomacy and skill, a lifetime of learning how to negotiate in Congress. But the majority party may still well lose ground. It's quite possible that additionally, an elder statesman may become very seriously ill. I'm not seeing a death, but I'm seeing definitely a weakening. Now, for what it's worth, I'm not seeing this as being the president himself, but another elder statesman. And it could be on either side of the aisle. So, I mean, Senator Grassley came to my mind. There are a couple of many long years of service on both sides of the aisle who could be possibly fitting this bill. There is positive news for hospitals, charities. Now, the thing that is interesting here is that things are going to happen behind the scenes. We're not going to get a lot of warning about this ahead of time. It'll just all of a sudden, this good news, this great positive outcome is going to be presented to us as a country after the fact. Things will go on behind the scenes, but we won't be aware of that. It'll come as a surprise to the country. Regardless of whether or not things are going through in legislation, there is a relentless drive for potential new legislation to happen. There'll be a lot of discussion, lots of public discussion on the House and Senate floors. Lots of debate, that's the word I was looking for, all regarding the regulations, funding, etc., for hospitals, based upon what has gone on these last 2 years with the pandemic. Those who are in a position to be able to know how this has affected the healthcare of this country are going to do their best to make sure that it doesn't happen again. There's this very strong potential for scientific breakthroughs that benefit hospitals and medical institutions. Very positive for the medical industry during this period of time. I was really pleased. This is along the same lines of breakthrough as the mRNA vaccines were. So there is something major that will be coming through to benefit the medical community. And this is related to a fixed star. I'm not going to go into a whole big description of this, but there was a fixed star that was associated back in November with November 19th eclipse that occurred. And I said then it was Algol at that point in time. And Algol is known when it's activated for disease and pestilence. I said, we're going to have something new with COVID coming up. And days later, Omicron came into reality. This one is Fascis. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but this is an incredible effort for everyone to be heard, really. The leader is giving it everything they've got to truly get across to the populace that they're cared about, that the leader understands, it has compassion for them. And the beauty of it is that to some extent, all of the population is starting to get it. They're starting to see it. Even those that don't support the president are starting to see that, okay, maybe, at least he's trying, for lack of a better way to put it. I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth. I'm simply saying this is what the astrology shows, that there is a willingness to accept that whether you follow and agree with them or not, that there is a compassion there that they didn't see previously. All right, the final ingress is the Libra ingress. This is in September. This leads up to the December 20th winter solstice when Capricorn comes into play. And again, it's sort of the kickoff for the year. The country, this is a big change. This is a big change because we've had mutable signs on the ascendant, Pisces, Gemini, Gemini for the 3 previous ingresses. What does that mean? There's been a lot of gathering, information gathering, lots of talking, lots of back and forth, bickering, lots of communication. But as of this one, it changes to Capricorn. It becomes cardinal Earth. The country as a whole is going to be starting to be seen by the world as changing dramatically during this period. Something that has been hidden is going to come to the light. Social upheaval is indicated. There's a mob mentality, psychology, masses in a state of unrest. This is all Pluto energy because Pluto is resting in the first house of this particular ingress. So there's a lot going on, but bear in mind, look at this time period. This is also the time when the midterm elections are going on. So it's not at all unusual. As I had said earlier, it looks like the Democratic Party may be losing ground. It's entirely possible that we will have a shift in the House. This is historically, pretty normal. Whoever the party is on the midterms that is not in the White House tends to step in during the midterms. But this has a more vitriolic feel to it. This, however, is a really potential positive period for COVID to back off and the country's health to improve. This is the first time in the whole year that I saw indications of the health truly visibly improving. So I was really glad to see that. What I found interesting too is that the travel industry could be experiencing a positive upswing. And I laughed to myself when I was talking to somebody today. That could simply mean that scheduled flights actually take off when they're supposed to take off. So, who knows? But it could also mean more recreational travel than there was before. There's a sense of good fortune for fame, for scientists, writers, artists, photographers, videographers, musicians. We talked about this, Kara, during the questions. I have a feeling that there could be total changes in place for new genres of art to be present, and that's really kind of cool too. Now, this is a question I sort of asked myself. I wondered, could it be that with the fact that Jupiter has this wonderful year in Pisces, and Jupiter's making this wonderful connection at some points with Venus, at another points with Neptune, all benefics, could philosophy, spirituality, religion finally take on a more humanitarian, egalitarian stance on a public level, rather than separating us? Is it possible that we might be able to start finding more common ground? That's what I would love to be able to see from some of these indicators. Issues of children and education are again going to take the forefront. Unfortunately, I see that there is definitely legal action that's attached to it because the courts are absolutely involved, and based on the indicators that we saw. What it particularly pertains to, I don't know. But someone earlier mentioned, what about mandates? It's entirely possible that could be part of what is being discussed. Now, what I found interesting here with either the cruise industry or international shipping itself sees more positive activity. My gut is not saying the cruise activities because Venus is not in good shape during this period. Venus talks about pleasure travel. Enjoyment, amusements. So I'm thinking it's Venus instead, I think could more mean seaworthy travel, shipping. So this is where I started to note that there could be some shifts and adjustments in the supply chain. There could be new avenues opening up that way. One thing I do see is class struggles, scandals at the top levels of government, seemingly coming from out of the blue. Nobody saw them coming. Financial strife. Once again, we're dealing with Venus. These are all possible based upon what we're seeing in this particular ingress. And this was me. This is putting a hope beyond hope. I'd love to be able to see us pull together as a community, as a communal country. Could it be possible for the country as a whole to find a more unified value system? There's an adjustment that's going to be going on in the second house of this chart, indicating that what we find important is going to change. What we find we put what means the most to us is going to come through transformation, upheaval, and adjustment. Could it be that it'll be a kinder, more spiritually based, community-minded, and idealism-oriented world? I'd love to see that happen. I don't want to say I ain't putting any bets down, but let's say that I think it's early days to make that, but I am going to put that hope out there. We'll see what happens. The thing that is most interesting to me is that there's so much hope and so much energy in this particular year that it makes it possible for there to be good to come out of what's going on. There's so much out there that supports us moving forward if we're all just willing to work with each other to make that happen. The biggest transit of the year is without a doubt that Jupiter moving into Pisces, which as I mentioned before, it happened on December 28th of last year. So what I found interesting, and I had a little interchange with Stephen Forrest about this, I looked at the date and I looked at the chart of when Jupiter moved into 0 degrees Pisces. What I found fascinating that was going on is that it is exactly between the two nodes of the moon, the north and south moon, the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, what we consider to be the big karma, the big karmic pointers of astrology. It made me think of the movie All About Eve. How many of you remember fasten your seatbelt? It's going to be a bumpy ride. I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. There's so many ways that this could go. Any planet will tell you, or any astrologer rather will tell you, that a planet that rests at the bendings here, that rests halfway between the two nodes, has the potential to do almost anything. It can break to the south node, which talks about all of the internal struggles we have, the crap we brought in with us into this incarnation, or it can lead towards the north node, where we want to go, where we're striving to reach for, the energy that we're using to reach out for the best, most positive destiny. I think it's up to us. I think it's up to us. Right now, Jupiter happens to be on the south bending. If it was up here, it would be on the north bending, leaning more towards the north node, but it does happen to be in the south bending. And that kind of suggests that this internal struggle that we as a country are dealing with is manifesting between the wild pendulum swings from great and incredible spiritual and creative breakthroughs and the incredible, wild, convoluted escapism and belief in lies that rests on the other side. So people are going to tie themselves up in knots to fearlessly seek out information. But is it going to be to support what is or what they want to be? That's where we have to try to figure out what is reality in this year ahead. If the USA were a client sitting across from me at my table, I'd tell you guys, it's time to put on your big boy and big girl pants, because this is not going to be an easy route. I would advise them to fight their inclination to want to stubbornly hang on to what has always been and instead open themselves up to change, because the definition of death is stasis. When nothing changes, everything dies. Change means life. Change means future. So I would say to hang in there for the good parts of life. Face that inward growth that you are fighting so hard, all of us, that we are all fighting so hard against, and open ourselves to the beauty and joy that the universe wants to gift us with. The Scorpio South Node is demanding that the United States avoid the traps of betrayal and trust issues that we've been dealing with for how long? We've been coming from a place of fear for how long? Instead, we need to do our best to bravely, scorpionic bravely, be the eagle, move forward in faith and not in fear that the universe has our back. But South Node squares are hard to express outwardly. It's just the way they are. Some will be able to pull off this change, this internal change, but some won't. So I'm afraid this is the reality. It just won't be until 2025 when Jupiter is on that north side of the spectrum. You're being gifted with a new sense of compassion and empathy thanks to Jupiter in Pisces, people. Don't waste it. Please don't waste it. It's an incredible gift, and it will give you the energy to smooth your way through. And if I can successfully leave you with anything, it's that step away from the fear of being left behind and instead take charge of your life and join the crowd. Join in the collective. Because when all of us succeed, each one of us succeeds. Be patient and be kind. Namaste, y'all.
Final questions. Is it okay if I go back? David said, rather than a lockdown, would there just be more people catching Omicron possibly?
Sure, that's a possibility for sure. But if they're sick, they're not going to be involving themselves in amusement. So it's the same basic concept. There's that step back from being able to participate and connect with other people. But yeah, that's absolutely possible.
A wise person once told me that the poor man's and the rich man's astrology chart looks the same.
That's true.
Do you hear that was? Anyway, I was just asking because, like, you know, when you're sharing all this stuff, like we're talking about like 2022, and I just think about the number 2 and like that significance too of like balance and, you know, the almost like the extreme of polarization. We see so much polarization, yes. And almost like a tipping point, like you said, like choice, and how much I've seen. It was amazing to see all these people in the spiritual community who are starting to really, like, as you said earlier, wake up and realize that we can choose differently. And people don't realize how much that mindset and their energy affects their actions and how those actions affects others, and it creates more fear or creates more love. I know that sounds really hokey to people sometimes when they're coming from the other space of so much fear. Yeah. That whole cynicism and all that really just completely keeps them in the dark. So I'm just curious about what your thoughts are on with 2022 and making a choice. What would you say to USA as the client? How to make that choice? How to make that choice, especially when there might be that Neptune fog of the Pisces, you know, not being able to see clearly.
That's a good question, and it's so hard because I think the person. How do I put this? The person who is willing to reach for a change isn't going to need to ask that because they're going to reach for other people. The person who is terrified of the change is going to crystallize themselves and huddle and not want to connect. So I would say that for those who are frightened, reach out to somebody. Everybody is afraid of something. Trust me, everybody. It's so much better to share your fear, because it's true that a trouble shared is a trouble halved. Same thing with fear. The more we bring what we fear into the light, the more we realize that it's not worth the pain that we've inflicted on ourselves with it. Sometimes it takes having someone else hold our hand while we expose it to the light to make that happen. The big way to make it work is connection. We are spiritual beings having a human existence right now. And we need to remind ourselves we are all one. We are all one.
I want to honor you, Pat, and everyone else here in the chat and who's watching too, especially those of you who really are here to hold compassion and like that new space of, like you said, reaching out for help and allowing vulnerability to kind of be this new strength, because that's so scary. Like even for myself, you know, and how we work, you know, that's how it is. Like how do we be vulnerable with how we are and admit when we're afraid, you know, and tell people the truth and be direct without them seeing you as weak and seeing that as strength. And I think without judging, there's so much. Yeah. So I want to honor, I know I can see you guys in the chat who are, those out there who are teachers of this. Aaron Schrader, you're here. Debbie Petruska, Cindy Andrews-Scavage, Monica, I could go list everybody, but I just want to honor everybody you out there is doing that because it's really hard. It's really, really hard. So, yeah. Do you have anything to ask before we go into other questions here?
That's wonderful. Yeah.
All right. There was a question from Paula, because we're used to getting the sheet handouts for each sign. I know we're going to get those soon, but there's any key words for any of the signs, or will you have that in our handouts?
We haven't done the ones for the sign. Got an echo going. Okay,
Let me turn down mute a little bit.
We haven't done the handouts for the signs individually for a couple of years now. It takes a tremendous amount of time. And until I just retired, so I've not had the time to be able to get that underway. I can think about it for the year to come, but they will not be available for this year, I'm afraid. The handout for this year is going to cover a lot of the information on the retrogrades, a lot of information on the big outer planets and how it works with you. So,
anybody else have any questions? That I'm just going to scroll back because I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. This is pretty full. Yeah. Jim said about we need to stop judging when we do not know the options that were available at the time. Thank you for saying that, Jim. It's so hard. When you said, Pat, about the compassion that Jupiter and Pisces is going to bring, like I already feel that so much. Like even judging myself.
The other's shoes. We do not.
Yeah, and all the people we were talking about that. So I'm hoping that everybody else is feeling that, like being softer on yourself, and yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Jim. Thank you, Pat, says Cindy Andrews-Gavage. And I appreciate your hopeful vision and your call to unity. Aaron, I'm believing that's Aaron Schrader. Yeah, wonderful.
Well, I hope it was useful, and I hope I didn't bore anybody. I know I go into a lot of detail, but I like to think that astrology has such a story to tell us, has so much to guide us. But the big important thing to remember is that it's energy. What we do with it is what matters. How we utilize the energy that comes at us, how we transmute it into action is up to us. I couldn't be an astrologer without believing in fate. I do believe things are written in the stars. But I also believe that we have so much more to do with how things play out than we give ourselves credit for. Love has to help find the way. Thank you all.
Thank you. And we will get those sheets out to you guys whenever you have them, Pat. Just send them out and I'll email them to everybody.
Perfect. I should have them done by tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. We'll see you guys soon.
Take care.
Bye.